The biggest relationship mistake isn't fighting. It's disconnecting while you fight. So most people have normalized this idea of escalation in their fights and criticism and lashing out, defensiveness, this total emotional reactivity and saying hurtful things as all of that just being part of being in a relationship, part of a fight. But a fight and conflict itself isn't what destroys that relationship. It's disconnection. Because if you keep fighting without connection, you are going to stay stuck in the same cycle, having the same arguments, feeling misunderstood, becoming more and more resentful, and you're going to wonder why nothing actually ever changes. So over time, those unresolved conflicts, they don't just create frustration, they actually create emotional distance. They erode trust, they damage intimacy, and they make you feel lonely while actually sitting right next to the person that you love. The healthiest couples are not couples who never fight, who never disagree, or never have conflict. They're actually the couples who know how to stay connected even when they do. So I'm going to tell you a story. A couple came into my office and they were convinced that they had a communication problem. They're presenting concerns, their intake forms, everything is communication. But their disagreements followed the same pattern. One person brings up an issue, the other person immediately becomes defensive, voices automatically raise, escalation has begun. We're in the upper part of our brain now. Both people are focusing on proving their point instead of actually understanding each other. So eventually one person would completely shut down and they're disconnected totally. And the other person is becoming more increasingly frustrated, sometimes anxious, while trying to get through. What's interesting is that neither of them actually even wanted to fight. Neither of them woke up in the morning hoping to have yet another blow, another argument. They both just wanted the same thing. They wanted to feel heard. They wanted to express how they felt. They wanted to feel understood, and they wanted to feel important and prioritized to each other. But every time conflict shows up, connection disappeared. And that's when I realized something. And this is something important. Most couples do not have a conflict problem. They don't have a communication problem. They just have a disconnection problem. Because conflict itself is not what hurts us the most. Feeling alone during conflict is. When people feel unheard, unseen, dismissed, rejected, or emotionally abandoned during an argument, that's when the damage is actually done. The argument becomes less about the actual issue at hand and more about what the issue represents and what that represents emotionally. So for those of you who haven't listened to me before or followed me, I'm Jenn Pinkerton, and I'm a psychotherapist and a connection expert. I focus on relationships. I help people stop repeating the same painful relationship patterns and have them start building healthier, more connected relationships where they thrive and where they can truly feel as though they are with the right person. In today's video, I'm going to show you how, through three simple ways that you're going to stay connected during conflict. The first one is to slow down. You're going to slow down before that conversation even escalates. The second is how to validate and get curious instead of becoming defensive. And the third is how to properly close the loop after conflict so both people feel secure, connected, and emotionally safe again. So let's dive in. Lesson 1, slowing down. The first thing that changes everything is learning to slow down. I call it power in the pause. That pause is crucial and integral. And most people try to solve issues while they're emotionally flooded. That is like trying to drive through a snowstorm at full speed. You don't know where you're going. And the more emotional you become, the less access you are going to have to your empathy, your curiosity, your ability to even have any good judgment or logic. When your nervous system enters fight, flight, freeze, or fawn mode, which happens automatically in conflict, your brain is going to shift into survival. And when you're in survival mode, your goal is no longer connection. Your goal becomes protection at any and all cost. And that is why people interrupt. That's why people raise their voices. That's why people become completely defensive and critical. And that's why people say things they later really regret. And that's why they stop listening. You cannot effectively connect with your partner when your nervous system believes that your partner is actually the enemy, the threat to you. One of the most powerful relationship skills you can ever develop is recognizing when you're becoming emotionally activated. Paying attention to those signs. Does your heart start racing? Maybe your chest feels tight. Your voice gets louder. Your thoughts speed up. And you feel an overwhelming need to prove your point. Those are signals that your nervous system is offline and it is taking over. And when that happens, you've got to pause. We have to take a breath. We have to lower our voice. We've got to slow our pace. We have to become intentional. And the goal is not to avoid the conversation. It's to stay regulated enough to have the conversation productively. Because if you don't slow down, you are far more likely to create way more damage than any resolution. If you want to better understand your relationship and your patterns and triggers and how you are typically showing up or responding during conflict, I've also created a free PRHI quiz. That's the Pinkerton Relational Health Index. And this will help you identify your relationship style, your attachment style, what your triggers are, what your strengths are, and the patterns that might be keeping you stuck. You can download it using the link below, or you can also comment quiz. But lesson 2, you got to validate and be curious. The second thing is to get into this place where you're going to the feeling. We're not going to defend and criticize anymore because this is where couples get stuck. In fact, this is where I teach couples to avoid what I call the DDDP. This is defending, denying, deflecting, explaining, and proving. And it's a killer every time. Because the moment your partner shares hurt, most people immediately jump into one or all of those 5 responses. I didn't mean it that way. That's not what I was trying to do, or that's not what happened. You're wrong. You're remembering it wrong. Or, maybe you do the exact same thing. Or let me explain what I was trying to say. That's just like this noise. Because the problem is none of those responses are going to help your partner feel understood. None of them. They only help you feel less uncomfortable. So now we're just worrying about your inability to tolerate discomfort. And when people feel accused, they instinctively move into self-protection. But connection cannot happen while you're busy surviving. It cannot happen while you're busy building a defense case. Connection happens when you become curious. Validation does not mean agreement. Validation does not mean your partner is right and you're wrong. Validation simply means this acknowledgement that your partner's emotional experience makes sense from their perspective. So instead of saying, that's not what happened, try saying this. Help me understand how that felt for you. Or instead of saying, you're overreacting, try saying this. Tell me more about what that felt like for you. Notice the difference? One response is focusing on facts. The other one is focusing on feelings, going to the feeling. And feelings are where connection lives. So one of the biggest mistakes couples make in arguing is arguing over what happened rather than understanding what it meant emotionally. Most arguments are not actually ever even about dishes or money or parenting or even sex or schedules. Instead, they're about what those things all represent. The dirty dishes may represent this feeling of being unsupported. The forgotten text may represent feeling unimportant and not prioritized. The criticism might trigger feelings of inadequacy. The withdrawal may trigger feelings of abandonment. And when you learn to go beneath that surface, beneath the complaint, and drop down into your feeling, then everything changes. So ask yourself, what is my partner feeling right now? What core wound could have maybe hit? Do they feel rejected, dismissed, unimportant, alone, controlled, criticized, not good enough? What story are they telling themselves about this moment? What wound might have been activated for them? Because when you understand that feeling, the feeling that is underneath the complaint or that surface problem, you stop arguing about the surface issue and you start addressing the real issue. And when people feel understood emotionally, they stop fighting so hard to be understood. And so this emotional content supersedes that intellectual one. And curiosity creates connection. And defensiveness creates distance. So if you skip this step long enough, your partner may eventually stop sharing altogether because they no longer believe that you're emotionally safe enough for them to be vulnerable with you or for you to understand them. So lesson 3, I want to close the loop. This third step is one of the ones that couples really completely miss. And closing the loop is about this reassurance. Because many couples think that when conflict ends, when the argument stops, we're not arguing, it's over, we're done, let's move past it. But it doesn't. Conflict actually ends when repair happens. Repair is the process of helping your partner feel emotionally safe again after a rupture. That means acknowledging their feelings. That means taking responsibility for your part, clarifying the misunderstandings, offering maybe this reassurance that they're desperately needing, and creating a plan for moving forward. Far too many couples simply just stop talking and assume that the issue is over. But silence is not repair. Avoidance is not repair. Time passing is not repair. Repair is actually intentional. Repair sounds like, I can understand why that hurt, and I'm sorry for how I handled that. That's not how I wanted you to feel. Or thank you for telling me. I can see my part in this. We'll figure this out together. And sometimes repair isn't even about saying the perfect thing. Sometimes it's reaching over and holding your partner's hand. It's the always be touching thing I talk about. Sometimes it's sitting right next to them. Sometimes it's reminding them, I love you and I'm not going anywhere and we're okay. And we're on the same page. We're on the same team. Because healthy couples understand something that most struggling couples don't. Conflict is not the enemy. Disconnection is. Healthy couples aren't couples who are never going to argue. They are couples who know how to reconnect after they do. Because unresolved conflict, this creates distance. And repair creates trust. Trust creates safety. And safety creates vulnerability. And vulnerability creates the connection that every single relationship needs to thrive. So if you found this helpful today, you're going to love my next video because I'm going to continue on. This is going to be where I show you exactly how to repair after a conflict that became especially bad or was really volatile or escalated when both of you were activated. Because staying connected during conflict is important, but the reality is that none of us get it right all the time. We're going to mess up. We're all going to have moments where emotions took over, our nervous systems were offline, voices got louder, and feelings got hurt. And disconnection is inevitably going to occur. So what separates healthy couples from struggling couples? It's not that healthy couples are never going to have those moments. It's that they know how to find their way back to each other. And in that video that's coming up next, I'm going to walk you through the exact steps to repair trust, rebuild emotional safety, take accountability, and do all of that without becoming defensive, without the DDDEP, and reconnect after a fight so that one bad argument doesn't turn into weeks, months, or even years of resentment. Because conflict does not destroy relationships. Failed repair does. So click here and watch that video next.